Has this ever happened in one of your beats? You know that something is wrong or like something is missing, but you don't know what or how to figure this out. Why does my beat feel empty? Why does my beat feel cluttered? Why does my beat feel weak? What's that weird smell? Well, do not worry. Today, I'm gonna do my best to help you fix your beats. I'm gonna show you 5 common problems that producers have in their beats and a solution for each. My name is Navie D. I've been producing for 15 plus years. I've worked with artists, produced on songs that got millions of streams, but most importantly, I have reviewed and repaired thousands of producers' beats. So let's see if my repair skills can help you out. So let's just go ahead and start with problem number 1. This was sent to me by a producer who asked to remain anonymous, so let's just call him Mr. Pickles. And Mr. Pickles told me that his beats feel like something is missing. So let's take a listen to this beat. So I believe this is being caused by a problem that producers often overlook, which is shape selection. So let me explain what this means. When you're choosing a sound for your beat, one of the most overlooked factors that you should be thinking about is the shape of your sound. Some sounds are transient, meaning they don't last long in your beat, and other sounds are more sustained, meaning they last longer. Now obviously this is a spectrum, but you get the idea. So when it comes to your beats, they will often need a balance of both transient and sustained sounds in order to feel full. Now let's think about this in regards to Mr. Pickles' beat. The drums in this beat are transient, which is pretty much always going to be the case. Whether it's a kick or a snare or a hi-hat, drum sounds typically won't last as long in your beat. But let's take a look at his other sounds. Here his bass is also quite transient. Here is how long each bass note sounds. Very short. And when we look at the main sounds in this beat, the same thing is happening here too. Even though there are a lot of notes in these patterns, each individual note doesn't last that long. And this is why it can feel so hard to get your beat to sound full. If you're relying on nothing but short transient sounds like this, you're gonna need a lot of them. But let's see what happens if we use sustained sounds instead. Here, I'm gonna mute the drums and the bass, and I will start by introducing my own organ into this beat. Organs are a type of sound that lasts for however long you hold down a note, making them a great sound to use if you're in need of a sustained sound or an element in your beat. And I'm going to have the same approach to my bass. Instead of using a short bass like Mr. Pickles did, let's use an 808 that has some nice girth to it. And I'll even say this concept exists in drums as well. I did mention that drum sounds don't last that long in your beat. They are transient, but again, all of this exists on a spectrum. So even a small difference between 2 snares like these can have a noticeable difference in your beats. So if I introduce these sustained drums alongside all of these other sustained sounds into my beat, here is how full this beat sounds now. Much more full compared to this. So do not overlook the importance of the shapes of your sounds. It can be the difference between a full, complete sounding beat and one that feels empty. And by the way, if you have these kinds of problems in your beats, I have created this free checklist that you can download and use. Anytime your beats sound like something is wrong or like something is missing, go through this checklist one by one and it might solve your beat problems. The link to download is in the description box below. All right, now let's move on to problem number 2. This is from Navie, who says his beat feels cluttered and claustrophobic for rapping. So let's take a listen. This one is a common problem that I see often, which is a lack of depth. Every beat typically has sounds sitting in different depths. And just like I mentioned in this checklist, you can imagine your beat as having a foreground, a middle ground, and a background. And when we listen to Navie's beat here, notice what's happening. It feels like everything is sitting at one depth, almost like everything's sitting in the foreground. So let's start moving some of these sounds around. I'll begin by pushing the main synth backwards. And by the way, to do all of this, you don't need any fancy tools or anything. Simple EQing, reverb, saturation tools that come with your beat making program can be enough to do all of this. Next, let's create some separation between the drums and the synth layer. As you may or may not know, drums are often the sound that's going to sit in the most foreground part of your beat. So let's move these drums even more forward inside of Moname's beat here. And now I'm going to try to add some element to the background of the beat. I'll use this same synth layer and create a duplicate version of it that will sit much further back. Alright, so we went from having all the sounds in this beat sit at one depth and the beat feeling cluttered, to now placing different sounds at different depths, which now opens up more room for an artist to actually have space. So always think about the depths in your beat and whether you need to add more dimensionality to it. Beat problem number 3, we have Stick Guy, who wrote an entire essay to me, but one thing that jumped out was that he wanted his beat to feel energetic, yet he failed to achieve this. So let's take a listen to this beat. I definitely see what Stick Guy is talking about here. This beat does feel low energy. By the way, I want to say there's nothing wrong with low energy beats. Low energy is fine if that's what you want. Some of my best friends are low energy. But if you want to make something that's high energy, let's talk about changes you can make. Basically, this has to do with the idea of movement. It's kind of the same way how in chemistry, if molecules move a lot, this creates energy. If not, there would be low energy, and you can kind of think of your beat the same way. When we take a look at Stick Guy's beat, let's break down each of these layers and think about how much movement is actually occurring, which, to give a definition to, I like to think of it as how much change is happening on a second-to-second basis inside of the beat. Now, we'll definitely say that Stick Guy did a good job with the drums. He's built a great drum pattern that has a lot of movement, but let's take a listen to the sample and what it's doing. We basically only have one note change every bar, and a similar thing is happening with the bass line. The amount of movement or change that is happening in this beat is very low, so it's not a surprise that this beat doesn't feel energetic. So here's how I would fix this problem. Number 1, I would increase the BPM of this beat. If you take the exact same beat and just turn up the BPM, the listener perceives more movement happening on a second-per-second basis. You're basically squeezing the entirety of the beat to happen in a smaller window. But more importantly than BPM is how you actually compose. So I'm going to try to rebuild the core idea within this beat, and I'll use the exact same sample that Stick Guy did. So let's compare my idea to Stick Guy's. Again, in Stick Guy's beat, this is how much movement was occurring. Compared to this rebuilt idea of mine that uses the exact same sample. Same thing with the bass line. I'm going to increase how much movement is happening within this bass line here. And with the drum loop, I did build my own pattern using the exact same drum loop that Stick Guy had, but this had a comparable level of movement overall. So let's take a listen to the differences between these two beats and the energy levels. Here's mine. And again, here's Stick Guy's version of the same beat using the same pieces. So if you want to control the energy level of your beat, think about movement. Change how much movement there is within the pieces of your beats, and this is going to have a huge impact on how much energy your beat actually has. Next problem, we have King B, who actually sent in a video. Let's see what King B has to say.
It just be lacking something. I don't know what it is, that professional sound, you know. It's your boy King B.
So the problem here is a lack of professionalness. Let's take a listen to King B's beat and see what he's talking about. Alright, so right when I heard this, I had a strong feeling that this was made using stock FL plugins, and so when I asked King B to send me the actual beat file, I was not disappointed. So here's my controversial opinion about stock plugins. Are they inherently bad or unprofessional? No, but here's the thing. Most music production software, as well as the plugins that come with them, are made with electronic or dance music in mind. Us beat makers are the red-headed stepchildren of the music production world. No one cares about us. And so that's why when you use stock plugins, they often have this synthy electronic feel that doesn't help your beat actually sound like a quote professional beat. These sounds are just better suited for other genres typically. And this is why I recommend using third-party plugins, which can still be free or very cheap. For example, I'm going to try keeping the exact same ideas that King B created, same patterns, same everything, but just change the sounds. So here's how this beat sounds when I'm using a plugin that I believe comes with Complete Start, which you can download for free. And here's how the beat sounds when using a very cheap plugin, Expand, which you can get on sale for like $20 pretty frequently. Now I would like to go in deeper and treat these sounds more and get them to feel even more unique, but I just wanted to show you how drastically different a beat can sound by just using different plugins. So my advice here is that if your beat sounds unprofessional, try exploring third-party plugins even if they're free or very cheap. Likely they'll probably sound better than the stock plugins that come with your beat making program. And finally, problem number 5, this one comes from Solo, who says their beat feels weak. Let's take a listen. Now, out of all the problems that we've covered so far, I would say that this is the most common one that I see the most often, which is missing frequency zones. So a quick check that I like to do, which I've included on my checklist, is to go through the 4 distinct frequency zones to ensure that they're filled within my beat. And often, if you get this feeling that your beat is weak or frail, it's usually a problem with missing low-mid frequencies. So with this beat, for example, let me start by just turning up the volume of the actual instruments. I think that's one easy thing that this beat needs. Let's see how this beat sounds if the low mid space was filled a bit more. Now there's a lot of ways you could do this, but what I'll do is take the exact same layer that's in this beat and bring it into a sampler, and I will pitch it down 1 octave. So now this layer goes from filling a mid region to shifting it more into the low mid. Now let's take a listen to how much more full this beat sounds. So whenever you're making a beat and it feels empty or weak, this is the first thing that I would try. I'll either take a sound that I'm currently using and pitch an alternative version down to fill up that low mid space, or just grab another instrument and introduce a dedicated sound and pattern into this low mid frequency zone. So those are the 5 most common mistakes that I see in beats. Once again, download the checklist for free if you ever run into these problems, and it may just save your beat's life. Like and subscribe if this video has helped you. Otherwise, I will see you next time. Bye bye.